So my name is Paula Taras, and welcome to the Higher Education Services Corporation's presentation on completing your FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. So before we begin, I'd like to go over just a few things to ensure that tonight's meeting is positive for everyone, is a positive experience. And in order to protect this session from any disruptions, HESC will immediately end this session if there are any disruptions, such as offensive language, any images, or behavior. Just a heads up. And also, if you guys have any questions during the presentation, I'll ask that you please keep your microphones muted. And if you have any questions, you can chat with one of my colleagues, either Maria or Adobe, with any questions, or you can wait until the end where there will be a Q&A session. So let's begin. So today we're going to help you get prepared for completing your FAFSA by focusing on what you need to create an FSA ID and walk you through the actual process. And the first step that we're going to talk about again is creating your FSA ID. So the FAFSA is the application that you will need in order to fill out to get any financial aid from the federal government to help you pay for college. And it becomes available October 1st of your senior year. So prior to completing the FAFSA, you must create an FSA ID. And this is the actual username and password used to access and electronically sign the student's FAFSA. And it also allows access to all federal student aid websites. Now, before you can actually create an FSA ID, you should get prepared. So I'm going to share a short video showing you what you need to get started when creating your FSA ID.
Before you can complete your FAFSA, you and a parent or guardian have to set up a FSA ID. Your FSA ID is a username and password you use to log into the U.S. Department of Education online systems and for completing and electronically signing your FAFSA. To create your FSA ID, you'll need to use your full name, not your nickname, your social security number, and your birth date. You'll also use your mobile number to make it easier to sign in and reset your password when needed. Some pointers about email addresses. An FSA ID can be associated with only one email address, so students and parents cannot use the same one when creating their FSA IDs. Also, if you have an email address other than a high school address, use that alternate address because the school email won't be available after you graduate. When you set up your FSA ID, you'll need to create a memorable username and password. Your username must be 6 to 30 characters long, and you can use a combination of letters and/or numbers. Your password must be 8 to 30 characters long and contain characters of numbers, uppercase letters, and lowercase letters. Your password is case sensitive. You'll also need to create challenge questions and answers so you can get back into your account if you forget your login information. Give these some thought ahead of time and be ready when you sit down to create your FSA ID. Here are some examples. When you're ready, go to studentaid.gov to create your FSA ID.
So now that you guys know what you need to get started, I will now walk you through actually creating your very own FSA ID. So the first step is to go to studentaid.gov/FSA ID. And when you go to this website, you'll be taken to this page where you click on Create. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties. After going to studentaid.gov/FSA ID, you will click on Create Your Own FSA ID. And in this section, you'll be filling out all the fields, including your email address, confirming it, creating a username and password, confirming your password, and clicking Continue. Now, there are 4 steps in creating your FSA ID, which include an identity portion, profile, confirming and verifying, and then you're done. So in this section, you're going to enter your personal information, including your first name, middle initial, your last name, your date of birth, as well as your social security number, Just make sure that that number matches that on the card and click continue. Next is the profile information page. In this section, you'll enter your email address, confirm that, your username and password. You will also enter your mailing address, including the city, state, and zip code. And you also have the option to register your mobile phone number so that you can recover your account later on if, for instance, you forget it. So you would input your phone number there and then click continue. Next is the challenge questions that we spoke about earlier in the video. So there are 4 challenge questions. The first 2 allow you to select from a drop-down menu and provide answers. And the last 2 questions, 3 and 4, you create your own questions and answers. Just make sure that they're answers and questions that are easy to remember in the future so that you're not locked out of your account. And when you're done, you can click continue. So in this section, you'll be reviewing the information you provided on the previous sections, double checking it to make sure that the information is correct. And if it is correct, then you will click on the I certify that this information is correct and accept the terms and conditions to verify that that information is correct. And then click continue. In this section, you're going to verify your mobile phone number. So if you registered your mobile phone number in the previous pages, you will have received a text immediately with a secure code that you enter into the secure code field and then click submit. And you're going to do the same thing for your email address. So when you provided your email address, you would have received an information sent to your email with the secure code in that email. You're going to retrieve that from your email and input it into the secure code box and hit submit. And that's it. That's how you create an FSA ID. So we get a lot of questions from students and their families regarding the FSA ID. So let's take a look at some of the most common ones. So the first question asks, my parent does not have a social security number, but they have a tax filer ID number they use to file their income taxes. Can they use this number in place of the social security number to create their FSA ID? So the answer to this question is that your parent must have a social security number. So when creating an FSA ID, the person's identity is verified by matching their information against that of the records at the Social Security Administration. So if someone does not have a social security number, then their identity cannot be verified, and thus the FSA ID will not be valid. However, just remember that your parent can still help you complete the FAFSA without an FSA ID. They'll just have to sign the FAFSA using a paper signature instead of electronically sign it. Another question we get is, how can I tell if I already have an FSA ID? So you can check to see if you have an FSA ID by logging into the Student Aid website, and you will click on log into your account, and then you'll enter your username and password if you remember it. And if you verified your email address and phone number when you created the FSA ID, then you can enter either one of those instead of your username. If you are able to log in, then you have an FSA ID. However, if you're not, from the login page, you can also choose to create an account, retrieve the username, or you can also reset your password. Another question is, what if I forgot my username and password? So on the Student Aid website, if in the instance that you do forget your password, it does provide step-by-step instructions to help you recover that information. So when you go onto the Student Aid website, you will just look for links that say, forgot my username and forgot my password. Click on those, and then it'll again follow the steps or the instructions, and then you'll be able to recover. You'll be on the way to recovering your account. So I want to thank you guys for joining us on this review of how to create your FSA ID. So at this time, I can answer any questions that you guys have. And if you have any further questions after this presentation about the FSA ID, you can go to studentaid.gov/FSA ID. And if you also want more information specifically on the FAFSA, you can go to studentaid.gov. If you have any questions specifically for New York State financial aid, you can go to hesc.ny.gov. And if you have any questions after this presentation, you can email us at thepath@hesc.ny.gov. You guys have any questions at this time?
Paula, it looks as though Karen has raised her hand. Karen, I'm going to allow you to talk. Welcome, and let me go ahead and let you speak. Actually, it looks like we're having some technical difficulties. Karen, if you're available, you can just submit your question in the chat, and we'll be able to ask it to Paula and hopefully get you an answer.
So I think I see someone asked, what do I click to create my ID? I'm on the website. So there's a little tab that says create an FSA ID, create my FSA ID, and you would click on that. Another question, do I put my parents' information or my information? So both you and your parent one parent have to create an FSA ID. So you can create yours using your information, your social security number, your email, and then your parent would also create their own using their social security number, their personal email, and information. So both one parent and a student has to create an FSA ID. Any other questions? Let me look down. And I also want to mention that the school will be sending out a survey at the end after this presentation. It's a 1-minute survey. And we hope that you guys complete it so we can get some feedback on, if this information was helpful and useful for you guys. And someone asked, would they be able to get a copy of this? We are recording it, so we will have a copy of this presentation as well. And we can send that to you, Karen. We have another question. So this question has to do more with the FAFSA. Someone asked if they're working, do they put both their income and their parents, so it depends on your dependency. And we do have another presentation on that this Wednesday coming up, or Thursday, I believe, where we will be able to walk you through the FAFSA application and help answer any of those questions. So Karen stated that the FAFSA is this Thursday. Any other questions? Okay, so again, if you guys have any questions, you can go to these websites. Again, for FAFSA specifically at studentaid.gov. For New York State financial aid, you can go to hesc.ny.gov. And then any questions after this presentation, you can go to thepath@hesc.ny.gov. I think a couple of more questions came in. Oh, that wasn't a question. Okay. All right, thank you so much, everyone. Hope this information was helpful, and don't forget that you can reach out to us after this presentation. Have a good night.